The warning came in the middle of the night, a cold, unfeeling signal that washed over every satellite, every comm relay, every network humanity had built. It spoke in a voice that was both alien and oddly human, deep and resonant, as if the speakers understood that fear was best delivered in familiarity. Humans. Your existence has been evaluated and found lacking. Surrender your sovereignty, your weapons, and your future, or be erased from this galaxy. There will be no negotiation. Your decision is irrelevant. Compliance is expected. There was no response. Not at first. Across Earth and its colonies, disbelief curdled into silence. The warning was met with hushed murmurs in underground bunkers, nervous glances in command centers, and hurried conversations in war rooms where world leaders gathered in hastily summoned councils. Satellites confirmed the impossible. An armada unlike anything humanity had ever seen, a fleet so vast it swallowed the stars in its wake. Their ships were obsidian monoliths, sleek and predatory, hanging in orbit like executioners waiting for the order to drop the blade. In a hidden military installation deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Elias Carter stood at the center of a room filled with nervous men and women. The old soldier, his face lined with the weight of decades of war, narrowed his eyes at the live feed from high-orbit surveillance drones. "They're not bluffing," he said. His voice carried the weight of a man who had seen too many wars, too many mistakes. If they weren't serious, they wouldn't have made a show of it. Across the table, Director Hahn of the Colonial Defense Council tapped her fingers against the steel surface. "We've made it this far without bending the knee. If we surrender, we become another forgotten species. Another footnote in their conquests. Their technology is beyond us," someone argued. "What do we have? Projectile weapons? Nuclear warheads? They've crossed interstellar distances, and we're still burning fuel to get to Mars." Carter exhaled slowly. "And yet, they sent a message. They didn't just glass the planet. That means something." Silence stretched between them. The aliens had given humanity an ultimatum, not an execution. That meant, at some level, they believed there was a choice to be made. A choice that, perhaps, could go against their favor. Across the world, civilians and soldiers alike prepared in their own way. Fathers clutched their children. Engineers in underground factories worked double shifts, modifying weapons that suddenly seemed like slingshots against giants. In the sprawling cities of Mars, young men and women volunteered in droves, knowing full well they were signing up for a war against gods. And then there were the soldiers. The men and women on the front lines, those who had always known that peace was an illusion, that someday something bigger would come knocking. Gunnery Sergeant Malcolm Rourke sat in the belly of a drop ship, his rifle across his lap, as the news played on a flickering screen above him. He was a relic of a dying breed, a soldier who had fought in wars where flesh still mattered more than circuitry. He rolled a spent bullet casing between his fingers as he listened. "We're supposed to fight that?" Private Vasquez muttered beside him, eyes glued to the live feed of the alien armada. "That's suicide." Rourke turned the casing between his fingers, then flicked it across the cabin. It hit Vasquez's chest with a soft clink. "What's the first thing they teach you in combat training?" Vasquez hesitated. "Kill the enemy before they kill you." Rourke nodded. "And what's the second thing?" "Adapt and overcome." "Damn right." Vasquez looked at the screen again. "I don't think they taught us how to overcome this." Rourke chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "That's because nobody ever tried before." The aliens repeated their message twice. Then, silence. No more threats. No follow-ups. As if they were waiting for the inevitability of surrender. But humanity did not surrender. The response, when it came, was not one of diplomacy or submission. It was a single transmission sent on all frequencies, bouncing across the vastness of space until it reached the heart of the alien fleet. The voice that spoke was calm, almost amused, crackling with the unmistakable bravado of a species that had been tempered in fire and war. Come and take it. Somewhere, on the bridge of a ship so vast it dwarfed entire continents, the alien commander received the message. He studied it, his black eyes narrowing at the audacity of the words. The humans were primitive, fragile creatures still shackled by the limitations of their biology. Their weapons were archaic, their tactics outdated. And yet, they defied. The commander gave a simple order. Proceed. High above the blue marble of Earth, the first wave of the invasion began. The sky split open as the first wave of alien ships descended, dark silhouettes blotting out the sun. Their hulls shimmered with unnatural energy, sleek constructs of war designed for planetary conquest. They did not hesitate. From the moment their landing craft breached Earth's atmosphere, they began their assault. Columns of violet fire rained from above, reducing entire city blocks to smoldering ruin. Shock troops, armored in plates of obsidian alloy, emerged from their dropships with chilling precision, their movements mechanical, their weapons crackling with energy. General Carter stood in the underground command center, jaw set as he observed the battle unfold across dozens of screens. Earth's orbital defenses had been shattered in minutes. The colonies had gone dark. But the fight was far from over. He pressed a button on the comm panel. Initiate Protocol Red. Make them regret coming here. Deep beneath the surface, hardened silos hissed open. Railgun turrets emerged from hidden fortifications, their long barrels locking onto targets. Entire city blocks had been rigged in advance, filled with concealed munitions, choke points, and kill zones. Humanity had studied war for centuries. They had refined it to an art, sculpted it into doctrine. And they had no intention of going quietly. The first alien squads advanced, their formations tight and calculated. They had seen planetary resistance before, had crushed civilizations with surgical efficiency. But Earth was different. A lone alien soldier crested a ruined street, scanning the smoldering wreckage of what had been a market square. A flicker of motion. He turned, too late. A burst of gunfire tore through his torso, the high-caliber rounds punching through his armor with brute force. He fell, spasming, dark ichor spilling onto the cracked pavement. From the shadows, Sergeant Rourke lowered his rifle, ejecting the spent magazine. "They die just fine," he muttered. His squad emerged from cover, weapons bristling with spent heat. The aliens had energy shields, sure. But shields weren't built for the relentless, hammering assault of human firearms. Plasma could melt through steel, but bullets shredded flesh and bone, ricocheting inside armor, turning bodies into pulp. From the rooftops, rocket teams fired shoulder-launched explosives, sending alien walkers toppling in fiery eruptions. Tanks rolled through the streets, their reinforced plating shrugging off energy blasts as their cannons unleashed deafening thunderclaps. The battlefield turned into a war of attrition, and it was here, amid the dirt, the ruin, the relentless, unyielding brutality, that humanity excelled. In orbit, the alien fleet encountered a problem they had not anticipated. Human warships were inferior in technology but devastating in sheer destructive force. Instead of elegant energy weapons, they relied on railguns the size of buildings, launching tungsten rods at near-light speeds. Each impact against the alien ships was like a sledgehammer shattering glass. The invaders had assumed their superior shielding would be enough. They had been wrong. One by one, human ships detonated, but not before crippling enemy vessels in their final moments. Every loss was costly. Every exchange a brutal gamble. And yet, despite the overwhelming odds, Earth was not falling as easily as expected. Back on the ground, the streets were choked with smoke and fire. Rourke and his squad moved through the wreckage of what had once been a bustling avenue, now reduced to a graveyard of broken vehicles and alien corpses. "Command says we hold this position until reinforcements arrive," said Vasquez, reloading his rifle with shaking hands. Rourke wiped the grime from his face and scanned the ruins ahead. Reinforcements. The word felt hollow. There was no cavalry coming over the horizon, no last-minute miracle. There was only them. A low, mechanical hum echoed through the streets. The squad tensed. A new figure stepped into view, a towering alien warform, its body encased in shifting metallic plates. Unlike the foot soldiers, this one moved with unsettling fluidity, scanning the ruins with cold efficiency. It lifted an arm, and a beam of violet light carved through a wrecked car, reducing it to molten slag. "Shit," Rourke muttered. "Heavy unit. Spread out." The squad scattered just as the warform opened fire, its plasma cannon ripping through stone and steel. Rourke ducked behind a fallen building slab as Vasquez fired a desperate burst, the bullet sparking harmlessly against the warform's shifting armor. "That thing's a damn walking tank," someone shouted. Rourke gritted his teeth. There had to be a weakness. Every machine had limits. Every armor had cracks. He glanced up at the skeletal remains of a collapsed building nearby, a precarious structure held together by fractured steel beams. His eyes narrowed. "Vasquez, get its attention. Rest of you, on me." The young soldier hesitated for only a second before breaking into a sprint, firing wildly as the warform turned toward him. The alien machine locked onto the new target, raising its cannon. That was all the opening Rourke needed. He and his team scrambled up the wreckage, weaving through shattered concrete and rusted metal. The warform tracked Vasquez, stepping directly beneath the unstable ruin. "Now!" Rourke bellowed. Grenades tumbled from above, clattering onto the brittle supports. A single well-placed shot from a rail rifle sent the entire structure collapsing, an avalanche of steel and rubble swallowing the warform whole. The squad stood in silence, catching their breath as dust settled over the ruins. "Did we get it?" someone asked. A twitch of movement. A mechanical limb, half buried, spasmed before finally going still. Rourke exhaled. "Yeah, we got it." The relief was short-lived. Overhead, a new fleet of alien dropships descended, blotting out the sky with fresh waves of reinforcements. There was no end to them. For every invader they killed, 10 more took its place. Carter watched the new wave arrive from his command center, his jaw tightening. His forces had held the line longer than anyone had expected, but there was only so much left to give. He turned to Han, his voice heavy. "If we don't cut off their supply chain, this fight's already lost." Han nodded grimly. "Then we take the fight to them." Carter's eyes flicked to the screen displaying the alien fleet above. It was a suicide mission. A desperate, last-ditch gamble. But if humanity was good at one thing, it was making their enemies bleed for every inch. "Send the order," he said. "We take the bastards down with us." The sky was on fire. Earth's orbit had become a graveyard of shattered warships, debris drifting like splinters from a celestial battlefield. The alien fleet had taken losses they never expected, but their forces still outnumbered humanity's 10-1. It wasn't enough to resist. It wasn't enough to hold the line. Humanity needed to break them. Deep in the underground command center, General Carter's voice was hoarse as he issued what could be his final order. "All remaining forces, execute Operation Hammerfall. Every ship, every missile, every soldier. We hit them where it hurts." There was no argument. Everyone in that room understood. The battle wasn't about survival anymore. It was about legacy. If they were going to fall, they would fall in a way that ensured no species in the galaxy ever underestimated humanity again. In the ruins of New Chicago, Sergeant Rourke wiped blood from his forehead, his rifle held tight in his grip. He and his squad had fought for hours, pushing back wave after wave of invaders, the streets littered with bodies, both human and alien. They were running out of ammo. Running out of time. His calm crackled. "Rourke, we need you on the ground assault. Fleet's launching a final push. We're taking the fight to them." He didn't hesitate. "Copy that. Where's our way up?" Minutes later, Rourke and his squad stood at the base of a launch platform, a relic of an older war repurposed for the new one. The last remaining human dropships were being loaded with soldiers, their faces set in grim determination. They weren't pilots, weren't trained for zero-gravity combat, but none of that mattered. This wasn't a standard operation. It was vengeance wrapped in steel. Vasquez tightened his grip on his rifle. "So what's the plan?" "We shoot our way onto their ships and start breaking things." Rourke let out a dry chuckle. "Something like that." The dropship engines roared, lifting them into the sky. Through the small window, Rourke saw Earth shrinking beneath them, smoke and fire painting its surface like scars. His home. His species. He had no intention of letting these bastards have it. The moment they breached the upper atmosphere, the battle ahead came into view. The alien fleet still loomed, but now it bore wounds. Entire sections burned, ships left drifting, their once impenetrable formations shattered. Humanity had paid for every inch of that damage with blood, and now they would claim the rest. The dropship shuddered as enemy fire streaked past. Pilots twisted through the chaos, dodging debris and laser barrages. A squadron of fighters, relics of an outdated war, flanked their transport, guns blazing as they carved a path toward the largest alien dreadnought. Their target. "Brace for breach," the pilot shouted. The hull of the enemy warship loomed ahead. The dropship didn't slow. It was never meant to. A split second before impact, explosive charges on the nose of the craft detonated, ripping open a gaping hole in the dreadnought's armor. Metal screamed. The dropship slammed through, skidding across the interior hangar before finally grinding to a stop. The doors blew open, and Rourke's squad poured out, weapons raised. The hangar was vast, filled with sleek alien fighters and towering war machines. But the real threat stood at the far end, rows of alien soldiers, their weapons glowing, already moving to intercept. "Light 'em up," Rourke roared. Gunfire filled the air. The aliens, so accustomed to technological superiority, had never faced a foe that fought like this. Human weapons may have been crude by comparison, but they were relentless. The squad moved forward, taking cover behind alien ships, their bullets shredding through the enemy ranks. The smell of burning flesh and metal filled the air. Vasquez took down an alien soldier with a well-placed shot, then ducked as plasma fire scorched the air above him. "We need to find this ship's reactor core." "Already on it," Rourke said, slamming a fresh magazine into his rifle. He tapped his comm command. "We're inside. Give me a location." Carter's voice came through, strained but steady. "Deep core, 4 levels down. You take that out, we cripple the fleet." "Understood." The squad pushed forward, cutting through resistance with brutal efficiency. The deeper they went, the stranger the ship became. The walls pulsed as if alive, an eerie hum vibrating through the floor. This wasn't just technology, it was something beyond their understanding. And yet, it bled when they shot it. They reached the core chamber. It was massive, a swirling vortex of energy contained within a structure of alien metal. Guards surrounded it, larger than any they had faced before. No time for hesitation. "Hit 'em hard," Rourke barked. Grenades flew. Bullets tore through armor. The squad moved like a single entity, coordinated, precise, every shot counting. Vasquez went down, clutching his side, but still managed to fire off a shot that took an alien's head clean off. Rourke reached the core, slapping a pack of explosives against its base. The ship trembled as alarms wailed. He set the detonator, his fingers slick with sweat and blood. "Charges set," he shouted. "Time to move." They ran. Behind them, the core began to destabilize, cracks of energy splitting through its surface. The ship shuddered violently as they reached the breach point. Their extraction vessel hovered outside, waiting. One by one, they jumped. The explosion hit just as they cleared the ship. A blinding flash. A shockwave that sent them tumbling through space. The alien dreadnought erupted, breaking apart, its wreckage scattering like ashes in the void. And then, as if sensing their leader's fall, the rest of the alien fleet hesitated. For the first time, the invaders knew fear. On Earth, Carter watched the sensors spike as the enemy ships began to retreat. The battle was over. They had won. Barely. Humanity had been given an ultimatum: surrender or die. They had chosen a third option: survive. Fight. Endure. As the last of the alien ships fled, Rourke floated in the cold expanse, breathing heavily as his helmet's oxygen gauge blinked red. Earth loomed below him, battered but still standing. A single message was broadcast across all remaining frequencies, directed at the fleeing enemy. Carter's voice was unwavering. "Tell the rest of the galaxy what happened here. Tell them humanity does not kneel."